Okay, so hi everyone. Welcome to the Earth Center. My name is Mariette. I am the project coordinator. I'm working with those 10 amazing projects that you can see when you come into the gallery. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer after the conference. Today, I'm very, very happy to welcome Damian, who is the artistic director of Terra. Damian is also a longtime friend, so I know his process very well, and I think what he's doing is absolutely incredible. So it's really an honor today to receive him at the Earth Center so he can speak more about terrarium and how everything was designed. And of course, to have a chance to also welcome Natalia and Bernardo to talk about the process and how they were involved. Terrarium is a very big team, as Damien is going to explain. So yeah, it's quite amazing to understand what's behind. So I'm gonna leave it to Damien.
Bonjour tout le monde. Thank you for being here. Um, so the first thing is that today we're going to concentrate just a little bit more on the ecological sustainability of the project. We're going to talk a little bit about social sustainability as well. But the idea is that throughout the duration of the exhibition, there's a few open doors dates with conferences because the project is very complex in terms of the ideas that support the project. We decided to separate them in different conferences. So for example, next conference is more about cultural mediation, working with socially oppressed groups, systemically oppressed groups, for example, and making the plurality of visions from people that come from different ethnic backgrounds, different um, uh, sexualities, etc., how to work together without being too superficial and entering into a process that is more inclusive, in which the ideas actually have an impact in the final result, and it's not like just come here so you can be a face in the project, right? So today we're going to talk a little bit more about the foundation of Terra, which is the studio that we created with the idea of mixing art and social and ecological sustainability. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about terrarium, which is the first major work that we do in terms of art together. We are a big team, as Mariette said. We are about 30 collaborators, and it's growing a bit through time. But today we are lucky to have Natalia Baquero and Bernardo Alvarado Rojas, who Natalia is the costume designer and Bernardo is the sound designer and composer for the music of Terrarium. So before we go into like the theoretical concepts that support Terra Sapiens and Terrarium, I want to ask Natalia and Bernardo to introduce themselves in their own words, so you know who they are. Natalia, yeah, go for it.
Bonjour tout le monde. My name is Natalia Baquero. I'm originally from Colombia, from Bogota, Colombia. I come from a family of artists. I grew surrounded by all kinds of arts. I touched everything, I saw a lot of things, and I heard a lot of things. Also, I grew up also in a culture that is very rich in terms of artisans and craftsmanship, and so I've always focused my work in this appreciating all this possibilities of expression. I moved to Canada 18 years ago, and I feel that all this time I've grown so much knowing people from all over the world also, so that is an add-on that I have in my art as well. So just getting to know a lot of people from many backgrounds, which I didn't have the opportunity because I only lived in Colombia, so I got only those roots very strong, but just opening the doors to that is I'm very lucky, and I try to include all this energy and all this knowledge and all this multicultural influences into my work. So that's what I'm trying to do, and that's what I also had the opportunity to explore with Terrarium.
Bernardo.
Thank you. My name is Bernardo Alvarado Rojas. I was born in Mexico City. I didn't really grow up in an artistic family, but I was always really growing close to the culture, the food, and everything else around me was very, very good to grow like that with all those colors, sounds. And then when I turned 19, I decided to become a musician. I didn't have really training, so I realized I had to start practicing, 6 hours a day all of a sudden, and just pursue that dream. It was very intense, difficult, hard years, but luckily I made it all the way here to Canada. I did my bachelor's at Concordia. I studied music composition, classical guitar and piano. And right away when I finished the program, I realized, well, there was no really work easily, to be able to make a living. So started cooking part-time for about 2 years, of course, Mexican food. And then I did some construction. And always on the side, trying to keep my dream alive. After work, getting an espresso and then going home, practice 2-3 hours of guitar, and just really like the hustle. They use this word a lot in today's culture. Just hustling. And then pandemic came. I had this really awesome project going on called Calmo, where I work with different musicians from different cultural backgrounds. A clarinetist from Colombia, jazz bassist from Canada, and myself from Mexico. So after that, the pandemic came, and I had this group of friends that are dancers, that in that time, there was a moment of incubation. I don't know if you guys felt the same way, but I started working with a dance company called Vias. And in this project, I started working with pre-Hispanic instruments with them. And we started making a piece about how can we connect with these instruments and make a choreography at the same time. So then a big research started happening about pre-Hispanic instruments, dance as well, because in ancestral traditions in pre-Hispanic times of Mesoamerica, music and dance are intertwined. There's a dancer trains to be a musician as well, and a musician is trained to be a dancer. And all of the ceremonies, the dancers are very valuable, and they're the ones that they take the ceremony, the ritual, and they make it real. The dance and the music, it's like a verb, like saying, like expressing, like how we pray with words. They pray in music and dance, and it's a way to communicate with God. So then I went really deep into exploring all of these humans from other parts of the world, becoming super aware of it, like what it would be like to be one of them, and there's no TV, no electricity, being in the rainforest with my Huilacapistli or Ocarina. And then I started making an electronic dance project with ancestral instruments, and that's when I met Damian. He made the cover artwork of the album, and then we saw we had a lot of things in common, like nature, other cultures, all this service, music at the service, art at the service of culture. And so we started bonding, and then we came up on this. Well, he invited me graciously, and thank you for that, to make the music of this project, and then a big journey started. And yeah, thank you.
Gracias. So with that, we're gonna start talking a little bit about the concepts that support Terra Sapiens as a studio, what motivate us in our goals in order to produce art. I think the most important is future reimagination. one of the great things about art is that it's not bound to reality necessarily. The fact that you can use your imagination in a larger way without having to have a specific methodology as science would have, is that it allows you to imagine things in the future or other realities that are not existent at the moment. So in order to shift paradigms, you can go as far as you want and then anchor them in reality. So future reimagination is, for me, a sort of social neuroplasticity. So where we have things that are stuck, and that includes, for example, ecological or environmental narratives on how do we see, for example, conservation, or people that are not interested in conservation, why are not they interested, in order to bring the community in and to teach them, for example, about green narratives. It is interesting to use art to pull them in and to show them how it's done or what is the realm of possibility. In terms of social sustainability, we have currents or ways of seeing sort of like Afrofuturism, for example, which is presenting Afro-descendant communities in a way that is positive, or in a way that alternative reality in which they haven't been colonized. So when we see them in a positive perspective, it changes the way that communities perceive themselves, but also the way that other communities, especially the white community or the dominating community, sees these communities. So in a way, when we are working in the future reimagination, we try to understand the aesthetics, the wants and the plights of these other communities in order to put them forward in a positive way. I think symbiosis equilibrium with nature, I don't have to explain too much. It's just creating a relationship with nature that it's not based on exploitation, which is the current way of doing. Like we see it with deforestation. Like a forest is only valuable, it brings you money if you can cut it and then sell the wood. But we know that the value of ancient forests, for example, is much larger than just having wood from it. If we follow the current way in which forestry is made, is cutting old forest in order to put new forest, to obtain wood and then put another forest, and for them it's like equivalent, we have a new forest, so it doesn't matter. But we know that the value of those trees and the environment and the community that is built in those ancient forests is much more valuable than a new forest. So in terms of humanity, what we're trying to create with the pieces that we're seeing here, the works, is about creating relationships within a natural world that is not based on exploitation or money. It's based on an emotional relationship. When we conceived Terrarium, we wanted to bring sustainable ideas from indigenous peoples, not necessarily only North America, but from other parts of the world. And the concept of stewardship, or the concept of considering nature your community and your family, it seemed for me very interesting, because you want your family to thrive, and it's not like, this person gives me money, so I'm gonna appreciate that person. It's more like have a bond of love and emotional investment in that person. So the way that we want to see nature is the same way. Humanization of technology, I'm not going to go too much into it, but basically is using biophilic and biomimetic technology, which is basically trying to imitate art, slowing down a little bit technology as well, so we create something that fits nature and it fits humanity as well. I think that the biggest challenge that we have right now, for example, is AI. AI is advancing much more faster than we can control or put parameters in order for humanity to be protected and for nature to be protected. So when I talk about the idea of humanization of technology, is basically considering that there should be these precepts and this friction in order for technology not to advance to a point in which it's dangerous to humanity and to nature. Plurality of visions. I'm trying very hard to change the idea of diversity, the concept of diversity into plurality, because plurality would include integrating those visions into a communal vision and communal goals. When we talk about diversity, a lot of the time we say, oh, we should invest in BIPOC people. I don't know if you heard this word BIPOC, but basically is Black, Indigenous, and people of color. So basically, we have all this sea of whiteness, and 50% of the world is this idea that it should be occupied by European descent people, and then we have BIPOC people all mixed into one group, one word. When we know that these cultures are not monolithic and it's not just one thing, so shortening all of those cultures into one word is sort of, first of all, I think a little bit insulting, but even if it's very well meaning. So the idea of having pluralities, that means that we can create horizontal hierarchies between the collaborators, and everyone brings their part to the project. And decolonizing knowledge, I think that as people that either look white or are white, we should have an active participation also in decolonizing knowledge, and this means aesthetics as well when you're an artist. So, for example, with indigenous people, the aesthetic standards and the way of doing methodologies are not necessarily the same as white people or people that have studied in the West. So making the space for them to follow their own methodologies and learning from those methodologies is much better than creating a framework in which people are just going to insert themselves there. So when we created the project Terrarium, we were careful to open those spaces and not to regulate that much the work of the collaborators so they could expand. I think I'm just gonna go, this is what I just explained, representation inclusivity. What we're gonna talk about today mostly is research aspiration. So basically, as we developed the project Terrarium, we went into using it as a platform to learn about how can we have a lower impact in terms of ecological impact, but also how can we have a positive impact in the community. And that started by the first circle of influence, which were the artists around me, and then to share that with the community. For me, I've been working in gender equality for 20 years, so I believe that including gender equality in the project was not just necessarily, oh, I'm gonna have 50% of women and 50% of men, but actually bringing female-led narratives into the project in a way that affects governance and methodology as well. So for example, values are usually assigned to women historically, like compassion, nourishment, community building, even though they can be embodied by men, they're sort of perceived as feminine, and for me, those were really important to include them in the project, the governance of the project. But then when we present it as values that need to be included in all spheres of life, we are affecting also the narratives and the way that they're constructed through our work. And green storytelling basically is a normalization of circular values and attitudes, so then showing people how can they affect positively environmental issues and social issues through culture in general. So for example, if you see in a movie someone using an electric car or trying to have a low impact in terms of carbon, or again, Afrofuturism, those are things that through culture can affect how people see these things as not being far in the future, but actually in the present. What is art for impact? This is what we're trying to do. I think that I'm gonna go too long if I explain everything, but all of this information is on the website, so you can go and check it out. The thing that I'm just gonna say in terms of in terms of what I would want you to stay with today is that art as meaning is really important for us. For me, art is not necessarily a selfish endeavor. It's something that you put towards service to other people. So for me, art is always in the service of the community, in service of nature, in service of the people around you. One specific example, is that we worked for perhaps 6 months in designing the contracts for our collaborators in order for the contracts to be advantageous for them and to protect them, rather than thinking I'm a corporation or I'm the head of the project and everything in the contract should be advantageous to me. And the idea is to create those spaces, free spaces for people to explore, to be kind, etc., etc. So those things, when the artists feel that that's the right thing for them, when they go to other projects, hopefully they're gonna demand those conditions. So that's one of the ways that we're trying to have an impact on the artistic community. Empathic listening in general, I think it's really important. So it's not about telling people what to think, what to do, but actually to listen to the communities in order to better represent them and to better reach them as well. And in terms of the timeline, what we're trying to do is long-term cultural shifts, so things that are gonna take a long time, like green narratives, that are impact through socio-ecological circular processes. So basically it's reducing or fostering energy efficiency, and then education as well. Okay, this is a little bit too long, but sorry, I just wanna go fast and I would rather interview Bernardo and Natalia. But there is not much theory right now in terms of circular art. There is theory for circular design, which basically means the elimination of waste in the process of creating design and energy efficiency. So what I'm trying to do is apply these principles of circular design into art, and to translate also into social circularity as well. So the idea of the circle is that nothing is wasted, no energy is wasted. So for example, if we, responsible, I think it's pretty clear, just being as aware as possible, or what are the social and ecological challenges, and try to bring an equity to whatever you're representing in camera. Synergistic basically is making all the different teams work together in terms of having that energy efficiency. So for example, everyone in the team was required to note down the energy that they would spend in the project. So how many hours, what would be the type of energy that they would use. Natalia had to report, for example, the type of materials. And with that information, for us, it was easier to make a report in terms of our ecological carbon footprint. So we worked with a company called @Green, and for example, this, as you can see, travel and transport, even though we try to reduce it as much as possible by having locations, places where we filmed, not more than an hour from Montreal, it was still the most impactful thing. But you can see, for example, that we reduced a lot the use of energy in non-filming spaces, so where we did administrations. Material is the second largest one, which is normal. But for example, in terms of food, in terms of post-production, we didn't use that much. Just to put this in context, in a year and a half, the project had a lower impact than a normal Canadian household in a year. So it's pretty low, and usually a film, we did a film of 20 minutes, but a film, commercial film, uses about 24,000 carbon tons. So it's much more than this. So this, we were able to reduce pretty much our footprint. No, we can go. No, just before. This one, yes. So this is something that you will find in the website. So if there are any artists that want to have an impact in terms of their carbon footprint, you can go to our website and you'll find these resources. It's a PDF. So these are some of the companies that are doing carbon footprint measurement for artists in different ways. Radio Canada uses Albert. But for us, it was not possible to use because it was very specific for TV production. We use iGreen. Julie's Bicycles is good, but it's very expensive. So it's for artists that have a lot more money. And here in Quebec, we contacted the Réseau des Femmes en Environnement, but they use Albert as well. Earth Angel is great to teach you. They have workshops on how to do greenify your productions. Next one. Okay. So this is something that you will find in the wall for our project, and I will just go really fast for this, and then I will shift my focus to Natalia and to Bernardo. So in terms of ecological impact, direct impact, we reduce the travel distances using public transport, walking or cycling to move around. Of course, if we needed to bring equipment 1 or 2 hours to Montreal, we couldn't use a bike, but you know, it's not for a lack of trying. But we tried to look for places that were not more than 1 hour, 2 hours from Montreal. So, you know, we didn't fly, we didn't, you know, use planes. So that was good for reducing energy, fostering energy efficiency. Sourcing from green energy, reducing data storage as well is important. And it's very important that some of our biggest challenges is we live in a system which this is not necessarily fostered. So it was hard to find sometimes, for example, a place that would rent electric cars, so we could go to the location in electric cars. So even though we tried our best, sometimes it's almost impossible to greenify the productions. Minimizing the need for offsetting. This is really, really important because people think like, oh, I produce this much carbon and then I'm just gonna pay to offset the carbon footprint. But that doesn't really work. If you throw oil into the sea and you say like, well, I'm gonna minimize it by offsetting, it doesn't work. The sea is still polluted, right? So we had very, very, very little to offset, but we did offset a little bit. Reducing waste. So as something for you to picture, we had 7 filming days, and on those 7 filming days, we had, I think, 3 bags of garbage, and 3 bags of recycling for the whole 7 days. And from that garbage, half of it was compostable. So, you know, we managed to have that efficiency in terms of weight reduction. And I'm not gonna say this one because I'm gonna talk to Natalia about it, but serving vegan catering, that was also important. We partnered with Au Vivre, so we had all vegan food, so we didn't have that impact into the production, but they also use compostable recipients, containers, thank you. Containers. So again, I think that the planning of the project took so much time. It took more than 6 months precisely because we wanted to be prepared for the moment when the moment arrived and the production arrived, to make sure that we were as efficient as possible and as sustainable as possible in terms of social and ecological. Now, we're gonna go and talk a little bit about to Natalia about the process of creation of the costumes and what were the considerations in terms of choosing the materials. So Natalia, I think one of the interesting things that I would like to talk about is how did you receive the challenge to greenify the production, to make it sustainable, because I know it's not always easy. And how did you work around it and you try to integrate these ideas?
I'm going to be very honest with you. It was a big challenge. It was a big, big challenge. It was the first time I really had to think about this carefully. I have the tendency to have a conscience behind it, but this was the best opportunity for us to really put it in practice. Usually, well, I can say like 98% of the projects I've worked with or in have been projects where this is not even a subject that to be touched, something that is not even sustainable or ecological. So for me, I was kind of getting used to that. And when I received this project from Damian, it kind of went out of my comfort zone. And it was great. I think I've learned through life that challenges and changes make you grow and make you more creative. So when I got this project, I was stumbling everywhere. Oh, where am I going to do this? How much money do we have? Are the fabrics that are more ecologicals are available for us? Can we afford them for the project? And all the answers were no. And then the challenge kept growing and growing and growing. And at a point that I couldn't just call Damian, I easily could call Damian and say, hey, it's not gonna happen. Let's do it this way to make it happen. And that was not a possibility. Not even for the project, but just for me. So we decided to take most of the material out of our own stock of all materials that we've been collecting from all of our projects. So the pile kept growing and growing without knowing. And we decided to use them all, or use a big part of it and give it a great use. So the majority of the materials that we used were materials that we had in our own stock, that were just staying there and not giving them any use. Then we decided to upcycle as well, and then we used and recycle some of the materials that we could. And the final result actually was, at the moment that we started working with this idea, the process changed. All the vision of our own work changed because we had a purpose, not only to make beautiful things or to make technically perfect pieces so the dancers could perform and not hurt themselves or not be able to wear the pieces, but just to give something. That was our main purpose, and it was very beautiful to see the final result, and then get to do all the analytics of the whole process at the end and see, hey, we did this at this percentage and we managed to work with these materials even though we had just a little bit of this color that was the perfect color that was in this setup. It was a perfect color. So I think after this project, my work ethics shifted for the best, I guess. And as you were talking about the contracts, it's also something that I now, like my vision, it's completely changed, and I'm gonna start doing it as much as I can because I know it's possible. Or I feel that it's a very important subject to be aware of, so it's about the material that so the use of the material. So
Thank you, Natalia. So when we consider circular design, I'm just gonna retake from where Natalia left off in terms of upcycling, recycling the material. A lot of the time we think, oh, we need to use this ecological material, and we think that buying new stuff is better than using the stuff that we want, but when we already have stock, so not creating demand for a specific material, but just using what it already exists can be more ecological than buying new material that is already ecological. So when you see and understand the principles of circularity in design, it all makes a lot of sense. It's just using common sense to reduce that impact. And I would say that most designers, or most design that exists now, don't only have or consider half of the process in terms of designing in a way that is ecologically efficient, and nobody thinks necessarily of the life of the product or the disposal of the product. A good example is that most companies shift the responsibility of disposal to the client. So they just put like a small recycling sign on it, and it's for us to throw it into the right place in order to be recycled. But the problem is that the cities in which we live in don't necessarily have programs for every kind of material, so there's a lot of material that is not recycled. Whether if you as a designer or as an artist say, this is the life of this product, for example, the costumes that Natalia created, one of the points of exhibiting them is, of course, the craftsmanship, the beauty, giving importance to Natalia's work, but also understanding that those costumes are not going to go to the garbage. They're not going to have that impact because of the durability, even though we're using some materials that are made out of plastic, or the durability is going to be there. It's going to be maybe 10 years, 20 years where these costumes are going to be exhibited. So they're not going to have a major impact in the future in terms of ecological imprint. I want to go back to Natalia now, because Natalia works with a lot of artisans. Some of them are indigenous. But I want to ask you, Natalia, how did you manage to work with costumes that would include or would reference other cultures that were not your own? And I think that at the same time I'm going to ask the same question to Bernardo, because Bernardo had a big challenge in going into types of music that are not necessarily from his cultural background. So first, Natalia, how did you manage to work with references that were not from your own culture? And then Bernardo, the same thing.
Yes, that's a very important subject, actually. Thank you for mentioning it. For me, the main value I have into my work is for the respect of the communities. For me, also, I think that's the base of what we do. So, working with communities that I've never touched before was a very beautiful thing, but also I try to drive it slowly. It's not something that you just go to a library and then you do a research and read about it. It's more understanding going like more deeper in what it means to this person, to this community, what it really means to wear a necklace, or what it means to use certain type of fabric and not the other one. And being in this business, or in this craft of creating costumes and creating a character, and being briefed about a character that the director wants or something, it's more like, yeah, you do your research, A, B, C, D, you create a character out of what they wear, but without thinking what this what does this mean? Like what it really means, all these little details, and not to go, how can I say it? Like not to try to say too much, but to say a little, but the right message. That's what was important for us. And for example, but we had
Challenge.
a challenge. I don't want to say a problem because it was not a problem. It was a big challenge. I really took care of where my resources were to find a material, certain type of fabrics, and I wanted to find this African fabric, and I went to the research, like the source was artisans and made really by hand and by the right person in front, like the atelier, like had a certificate, even a printed certificate on the fabric, knowing that it's something real, like it came from the real source. It's not something that it was made in China or something like that. It was not the real material. So I was very confident about it. I did my research, and then the person that was that had to wear it came to me and came to us and said, "Oh, this fabric, where is it coming from?" So I said, "What was my point of resource?" And then she told me, "Well, I would have liked to be asked about this because my family comes from this African background that I would have liked to use, and it's not really what identifies me as a person." So then that was something that it made me realize that you really have to talk to the artist, or talk to the real person that would wear this and know and kind of approve, or to just to work in communication with this person. So well, we solved the problem by just giving them the opportunity of seeing where it came from, and everything, solving the very beautiful dynamic. So yeah, that was pretty much the process that we lived on in terms of communities that I had to really investigate more and work really closer to.
Thank you, Natalia. And I think I want to mention, in terms of this specific subject, I mean, we worked with Twitter, Elena. Can you move to the slide where we see Twittonscape, just so we have the reference? You know, Twitter called me and she asked me about the fabric, but she was almost apologetic about it. Like, she's like, I don't want to cause too much trouble, but you know, and you know, I think that one of the wonderful things about this project is that we wanted to change that system of communication with the artist, and to open those doors wide open so people could actually come and tell us those things. So we don't see these things as challenges or as conflict, but we see them as opportunities in order for everybody to grow in our relationships. And in the case of Stoiden, or you know, I think that, you know, accepting our differences, I think that when we work in certain projects, we always feel that naming our needs or naming our issues is being too much. We've been conditioned that naming these things is being too much. And the way that I wanted to receive the artist is like, no, it's not too much. This is necessary conversation in order for us to learn. I know we don't have that much time, so I'm gonna pass to Bernardo, first in terms of social sustainability, and then about ecological sustainability. So how do you work with different references for different kinds of music?
So first, answering your first question, no?
Yeah.
So my first step was like a checking in with myself, and to really analyze the reasons I was going to do this. because I felt I was going to, well, I knew I was going to go into spiritual territory, because a lot of this music is it's not played for aesthetics. So I had to know that I was not going to I wasn't going to first inflict damage on myself by going into a place I shouldn't go without the permission of myself to go into this spiritual realm, and then to put myself in a place where I had respect for the culture that made this music, or gave birth to this music, because this music, a lot of it is central to how they relate to reality, to their cosmogony, and to nature itself. So that was first step, to know that my heart was in a good place, that I was not going to do this for the money, and I was going to just really try to channel what I would be able to understand humbly, and channel it to the piece that you guys can listen here. Then the second step was to start research, a lot of research, but especially listening. And another thing I had to do, and I did from the beginning, is that I decided, and it felt natural, that I was not going to put my personal artistic expression on top of the creation. So I was really just going to channel what I was going to learn, and try to put it in a contemporary situation where it would be able to speak to everyone here, and try to share my discoveries in vibration, right? Because in terms of in its acoustic version. So I had the good luck of knowing some artists that represent this music. But I did a lot of research through watching videos of them talking about it, and then being able to have the privilege of acquiring some of these instruments, and then doing all the I could express, like introducing myself to the instruments and really listening to them. And I realized that all of these instruments, the way they speak, the way they sing, they are impregnated with the culture that created them. And that was very interesting to see that in this music I can listen the narratives of the cultures that made the music. I can even imagine the way they walk, they talk, the way they drink, the way they eat, the way they relate to nature itself. And all of the music that we researched on is comes from cultures that have a really strong bond with nature. All of this is ancestral music, so at that times, of course, when your food is, you go to the forest to forage your food, and you don't open the water tap to drink water. Like, of course, you see very clearly your bond with nature, your relationship to nature is just there. And they all just wanted to be in good terms with nature, and a lot of this music was created to communicate with nature, to be in good terms, and to understand what nature needed, provide it to nature, be at service to nature, and asking in return a good weather, good rain, good crops, crystal clean water, and understanding that was very important, and trying to plasmate it in the piece. And yeah, so a lot of also knowing that these traditions are so rich that I was just going to see just a little bit, and understanding too that I cannot understand it really, because I'm not from that culture. I tried my best as a human, just to put myself in a human state and try to, from human to human, trying to connect and to then channel it and share it with everyone. Yeah. A lot of practice too, learning to play those instruments as well was very challenging. I come from a classical background, so also learning to habitate and to navigate those instruments in a way that would be honorable was also a challenge, I think. Yeah, that's what I have to say about it.
I think that every time that I spoke to Bernardo, he would tell me, "I'm learning to play this new instrument, so I can play it in your music." So it was really fantastic how fast he learned and integrated those instruments. And something that I distill from Bernardo and from Natalia, from what they're saying, is two things that are, I think, really important in the process. One is slowing the process. So you have time to go back, look at it, and look at the challenges that are appearing. So you don't go so fast that you ignore the people in your project and their needs. And starting from the position of we will make mistakes, because we are conditioned by the upbringing that we have, the cultural upbringing that we have, our own experiences, and it's for sure that we're going to have blind spots. So when you have that conversation with your artist and you say to them, I want you to tell me what your needs are, how much space do you need, what directions do you want me to be more direct, do you want me to give you more space, and the floor is open for conversation, then you avoid not having the conversations, or for you foster people actually coming to you and telling them, I'm uncomfortable with this, without necessarily that meaning, oh, you're mad, you're angry because we didn't see this. It's like, we're not gonna see it because it's a blind spot for us. So I think that, both Natalia and Bernardo applied that really well, and I think that one of the things that really surprised me, we work with really kind people. All the project was populated by really generous, kind people. And I think that one of the things that I'm the most proud of is precisely that it sort of trickled down to every people that they hired as well. They treated them with such loveliness and generosity that it's really sharing that beautiful energy with other people. So I think this process, the way that this project changed me specifically is, before this project, I would put a lot of the intention into the result, and now I put it in the process.
Yeah, I want to say something about that, is that I think this really affected in a positive way on how we all performed. Every single artist in this group, by this freedom of communication and by this opportunities of communicating with one another, and the liberty also of putting that information that we receive from all this communication, and then having the freedom to interpret it our own way. I think that's reflected on the result. So that's when it comes that the process, everything behind it is so important, and especially the communication. I'm just going to start with something very simple as an email. The way that we communicated on those emails, that we received a lot of emails during a year, and it was such a pleasure to open them and read them with such a kindness that affected my day to create better, to talk to my team better, because I was learning from this email I received. I learned how to communicate in a better way. So I think that that's helped me to also perform well, and maybe that affected the performance of the dancers, of the artists, and that's a beautiful thing to experience. Like, really, it's another dimension of what we can do with our art.
I want to give a shout out to Elena, who's in the back, who's our operation manager, who designed most of the conversations that we had, emails and stuff like that. And again, she was able to apply that kindness and that understanding, empathy into the emails, which, you know, opening a work email is not always fun, but I think that with her, there were so many considerations that she was like such a incredible force in finding those blind spots in which, like, oh, you know, Damian, you didn't consider this and this and that, and even herself was able to design that communication to specifically to talk to each artist, because each artist communicated differently, so personalization was a great part of our social sustainability process. Yeah, and she knocked it out of the park, and I think Bernardo, you also commented last time during the opening of the exhibition that you also were taking that as a not as a learning experience to apply in your own work. I don't know if you want to talk about it.
Yes, of course. So I also am a producer, so I work with artists, I work with dancers, choreographers to create sometimes pieces of my own, sometimes collaborating with them. So yes, of course, a lot of the approach, the way of organizing things in a way, in a manner that would take so much stress from the people I'm working with or hiring, and also having that time to see, okay, this person, this makes that can trigger, this person can get triggered by this. So, you know, like finding a way to, from the get-go, creating a working environment that you know that person is gonna thrive, is gonna be relaxed, is gonna enjoy the process, and then give you something really inspiring, something they really, really treasure, yeah, sorry.
I just thought of an analogy. If you see this as a marriage, you can think of a successful marriage in terms of longevity, and you say like, oh, we're shooting for 50 years together, and you can think of the marriage in terms of quality of life and enjoying that marriage for as long as it lasts, right? You know, you want to create that environment between the partners that is about growth, about compassion, about empathy, and the longevity. I mean, of course, you want it to last if it's good. So that is the shift in terms of process versus result. I don't care if it lasts 50 years. I care that the process is harmonious and compassionate. So when people see it, they feel those things through the work. That work, what you see there, terrarium, works because the artists that worked in it were putting their hearts into it. They were giving me more than I ever expected from them. And all of that effort, all of that energy combined is what results in the beauty of terrarium. With this, I would like to open the floor to questions. I don't know if you have any questions for any of the guests. I know sometimes it's intimidating to make questions, but if you have anything to say, you just whisper it to someone or go with Elena and whisper, she can ask the questions.
I just mentioned, Sam had to leave, but I just mentioned that to have this presentation before viewing the film is very good, because I'm not sure I would have understood everything the same way if I had seen it, or maybe I should have seen it and then hear you and then go back and see it again.
Thank you for that. I think that the way that I wanted to conceive the work is that you don't need to understand it, you need to feel it. And it will become a part of you in some way, the way that you need it to be understood. Once it's presented, it's not about us, it's about you and how you receive it. So of course afterwards you can know more about the project and learn like factual things, but if it doesn't touch you without seeing these things, then you know it's our failure, or maybe you were not ready to receive it. So whatever you think about it, it's yours to take. We were super clear.
I know. So what I understand is you had to erase yourself, basically. So the dancers fully expressed themselves. You were just consistent. You were learning. You were trying not to put your own background on them.
No, well, actually, I wouldn't call it erasing myself because it's what makes me vibrate, what I do. I just needed to actually have more openness in me to be able to understand and to assimilate and put it into my own words what the artist needed, or what the direction needed, if we can call it a direction. And for me was still myself. I gave, like, what you're gonna see is who I am, actually, in terms of aesthetics, in terms of construction, in terms of that. But the essence is, it came out of all these conversations that we had together and all these mistakes also that we committed. It was part of it. So it's a whole language behind it, but I didn't have to erase myself. I could say, actually, sometimes in other projects that have a different dynamic of or different values, I could say that I have to erase myself to accomplish something, or to have the result that like the direction, or the people that hired me wants to see. This was actually the opposite. Is me is reflected in, like, all of us reflected in how I see you all, and this is how I see it, and this is my perception of it.
And from the music.
Yeah, I understand where your question comes from.
It's inspired from your comments.
Okay. Yes. Well, when I say I channeled everything I learned, I still embodied it. You know, it was within me, and all the aesthetic decisions, I took them. So the melodies they come from most of what you listen there, where it's the flutes and a lot of the things I play, it's me improvising, and then I record, and I'm in the process of, is this piece is about this, is this culture, this is what I learned. In a way, I will say erasing myself. I can say erasing my thought maybe a bit, and then just like letting it be, like they use it a lot, like kind of becoming the music kind of thing. But still, all my musical training, I went to university, all of that informed me about the counterpoint, a good like good melody, the harmony. For example, the choir piece is 10-piece choir, 10 singers, so that was a lot of counterpoint, Renaissance counterpoint. So I was doing a style, but it's still I did express myself. Yeah, like what you listen, you can still get a sense of me. Yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah, you should. Okay.
Thank you for that question.
Thanks. Yeah.
Just one more thing to add. This project is not about erasure, it's about affirmation. Affirmation of the I of each artist, but most importantly, the affirmation of the us. And I have two analogies for you. Becoming a cup, so you hold space. The people that come, the ideas, the collaborators become the water, and you hold space for them. Second one, related to music, is you become the instrument. So if you have two different violins and you play the same song, it will sound differently because the instrument and the strings vibrate differently. So you become the instrument as well, and the person that is collaborating with you becomes the player as well. So you vibrate differently with each person that comes to you.
And sorry, and there's also some collaborators you listen there, like the percussionists, the singers. They all went there into my studio and they gave it all too, you know. So you'll also listen other people's view on the topic and their culture and everything related to the project. Thanks.
Emmanuel, and then
Thank you. First, I want to thank you so much. This is very inspiring. And how do we make sure that it's not the best kept secret? I've been in the cultural ecosystem, if I may say, for a very long time, and I've been in the Socio-Ecological, ecological transition, I don't know how to say that in English, environmental, and now I'm with an organization that anchors culture in the development of control, Montréal. And we know that the cultural people are ready for that. Well, not most of it, although it brings difficult questions in terms of even like sustainability of business models of theaters and all that, but the environmental people, for lack of a better word, and organizations, they're also ready to welcome this type of approaches and ces œuvres-là. What is the next step for this? Are you planning to take it outside of galleries or studios? How can we make sure that it reaches as many people as possible? Because I think that it can really have a real impact on how we see ourselves and our relationship with nature. You said it before, and that's the key to really face the challenges that we have.
thank you for that, and for the comments. I mean, it's a great privilege to be able to do this work and to do it with such fantastic people. Of course, we relay in the team members because they're going to bring those ideas forward as well. Again, you plant those seeds and then they expand. We rely on people like you as well to make the project known and give the project versatility as well, because not every gallery will be able to present it in the same form that it is now, but it can be presented in film form. It can be just, for example, uploading the music to Spotify. We have education resources as well, and conferences, workshops as well, so it's not just seeing the art, it can also be a photographic exhibition. So the project that can take many forms and adapt to different spaces and communities. One of the things that we want to do is propose this project to different museums around the world and engage with the community. So for example, at the beginning you see plants, and a lot of them are living plants, some of them are dead, but they're taking a lot from the city. They're recovered from the city. So we are recontextualizing the urban flora in order for people to see them differently. And that is something that we intend to do in every city that we go, because people see like the pissenlit or this as garbage. But we can recover them, put them in a context in which they will appreciate it as something beautiful and as nature as well.
The way that you were describing taking yourself out of the equation, you both touched on this a little bit before, but it sounds almost like you are separating the ego from the source, and so you're finding your way back to the source while taking away the preconceived notions, so decolonializing in that way and finding a way back to it. I'm curious about how that translates into your work going forward and how that's affected you personally as well.
Thank you for the question. So, and it's a bit related to the other question in a way, where right now this project, all I learned and the new visions I acquired of life and music and sound, I'm applying it now to my everyday, the new work I'm doing. I feel very inspired, and for example, right now I'm doing an electronic live show where I'm moving on stage. I'm performing ancestral instruments with also synthesizers and visuals made of video captures of dancer friends that are dancing in relation to some to similar concepts. So for me, it's been very, very inspiring, and I'm just kind of continuing it in my own work and trying to show it, and see what happens. I have performances with the other collaborators where it's also a similar approach, and yeah, did I answer the question? I don't know. Yeah. Okay.
I really believe in what the universe has prepared for you, and I feel that the universe also is very wise putting people together so you can learn and grow. And I feel that this project was at some point waiting for me because it was already part of me without really knowing it at what point I could get with it, right? It was that saying that I always work with a bunch of artists, and for me, for example, sitting with them and let's say artists like I've worked with a lot of circus artists and dancers and really technical movement that I really have to sit down with them and ask them, are you comfortable? For me, the comfort is so important. Like, I don't mind the aesthetic, I really mind, like, are you comfortable with it? Do you feel great in it? But now, after this project, it's not only about their comfort or their beauty, it's more how they feel. It's more about that. And I think that it put me already in a higher level, in a higher position of like just making it happen no matter what. Also, part of my practices in the fashion industry. Okay, I'm not only in the cultural part of it, in the fashion industry, well, we all know what it is. And I feel empowered to communicate this out loud and taking advantage of my notoriety just to speak out and create consciousness, and just starting with the communities I work with and my artisans and the people, my team, the seamstress I work with, the way I communicate with them. And I think that's the best seed that I can plant, so we can just keep spreading the best. I feel at this point in human, that's what we need. That's what we need, just to plant the seeds. And thank you for that question. It really touched my heart.
It is really hard to remove the ego, especially, everyone probably that has worked with me, especially, for example, Mariette, that we've been working for more like 13 years almost. She probably knows how picky I am with the outcome and the process and how things need to be organized and everything. So not focusing on the result is part of removing the ego as well. I think that the greatest challenge, but also the thing that gave the greatest success for this project was the casting of all of the collaborators. Because then you can trust that because I love their work so much, because I know that their work is so strong, I don't have to worry about the result. I have to worry about sort of creating the framework in which they're going to work, but then giving them a lot of space. And the roles that they have, it was made for them. So whatever they did, it would work, right? So I could detach myself from, oh, this is the result that I want, and I need to control everything, to I can just let go and let people be. And if they have questions, they will come to me.
I really think that that's the best way of creating beauty, right? It's just having that essence into what we do. It's just that. I think by our other collaborations, that the message that we always try to send, because we work together as well for my fashion project, and it's always sending that message of this is not showing a good product or a beautiful woman. It's not about that. It's go and explore what's in there, really, and that is going to give you all of the answers, I guess, by just admiring this beauty, but it's going to give you, for sure, it's going to vibrate in a different direction. So, thank you for that, too.
Pleasure. Thank you. Any other questions? I think we have time maybe for 2 more questions, if anyone... Yeah, go ahead. Oh, one more question. I thought you had a question. I was excited. Okay, one more question.
Are you going to do a second one?
Of course. I mean, yeah, I kind of, I'm bad at everything else, so I need to I need to work as an artist all the time. I cannot find anything else. Yeah, I think like Rilke, the famous German poet, says that when you're a writer, you wake up every day and you want to write. That makes you a writer, right? When you're an artist, it's the same thing. You wake up and you see life through the lens of art. You're always creating.
So spread the word.
Spread the word!
Spread the word.
Now in different harmonies, please. I guess there's no more questions, but we're gonna stay for a while, so if you wanna talk to us afterwards and individually, you're welcome to do so. Thank you so much for coming. Can we go to the last slide, just to keep it? So again, if you want resources, a lot of the things that we said are here on this link, and there's a PDF that you can download as well with academic resources on social and ecological sustainability. Follow us on Instagram if you can. And again, thank you so much for coming, and spread the word.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Damian, and thank you to the beautiful artists who made it possible. La prochaine open house is la prochaine porte ouverte, c'est donc le 20 mai, May 20th. We're going to speak more about, with different artists, part of the project, we're going to speak more about what's terrarium. So if you want to come next month, it will be a pleasure to see you again. Go check the exhibitions, they're really beautiful. Again, I'm here if you have questions about the 10 projects. Age of Union is also about supporting 10 incredible projects around the world. More than happy to tell you more about what that means. So I'll be around in the gallery, and yeah, so we look forward to see you again at the Age of Union.